Well, hello, and happy Friday, everyone. Man, do we have a lot going on in the world. I don't even know if I'm going to have time to cover everything that's going on. Yeah, so we're going to go ahead and get started. If you haven't had a chance yet to like, share, and subscribe to this channel, it really helps us get to 100,000. We are so close. Thank you. All right. So the main news, as many of you know, is the government shutdown. A lot of people are concerned about whether or not more jobs are going to be lost. And what does this say about the state of the Republican Party right now? I would argue that the Republican Party is beginning to crack. I think we have civil war starting to happen. I think that Donald Trump is getting hit from every side. First off, he's having health challenges, which they can't cover up. Um, his generals and his leadership are absolutely fighting amongst themselves. His cabinet is bailing ship. You have certain cabinet members that are coming out and speaking terribly about Donald Trump, and it could very likely be because they're planning to oust him. Now, if they oust him and they do what's ultimately good for the country, which is to admit that Donald Trump is not capable of serving as the president, then would that position them to be hired on the cabinet of the next guy, which is J.D. Vance? I know a lot of people are secretly hoping that some miracle will come in and the first in line and the second in line will just disappear, and magically the Democrats will have all this power. But the truth of the matter is that the Democrats don't have any power, hardly any power at all at this point. We can thank foreign money and dark money for that, which is why I have always said the way to go after them is to find out who's behind these lobbying groups and the dark money, which I think will be traced to mega churches. So you have millionaires and billionaires that are funding the mega churches, and the mega churches are a business, the business of selling God, and then a certain percentage of those profits will then go into the Heritage Foundation, America First, etc. And so at that point, you have to ask yourself, what is the separation between church and state? All of that we have to think about. So the most likely thing that's going to happen if the president steps down, and I think he very likely, has a no confidence, the jobs report being dismal, never mind what's happening with Congress being deadlocked. We now have a situation, excuse me, where there are no jobs. Inflation through the roof, immigration policy that nobody's happy with, including the rich people that got him elected, because their workers are being impacted. All right, without further ado, we're going to go ahead. We'll do the Empath prayer, and we'll take a look at everything. Again, if you haven't had a chance to like, share, and subscribe, I would appreciate it if you did. Thank you so much. Okay. I want to call on white light protection for myself and this community as we ask permission from Spirit to, access the Akashic records. We call on our spirit guides and our good angels to be with us. Please give us the clarity and the wisdom that is needed to empower all of us on our journeys to make the best decisions for ourselves, our families, the planet, the people we love, but also to help those that we may have strife with. And together we say, Amen. Let's go in. First thing I want to look at is the government shutdown. And historically, they don't go on usually more than for a week. Do you think that this is going to be one of those situations where it goes on for like 31 days, like the last one that Trump got involved with? We're going to just look at the government shutdown. Let's just do 4 cards because we have a lot to get through. First card is the Three of Cups. So I believe Congress is working very, very hard to get people to agree. So that's a very good sign. Three of Cups would mean like, hallelujah, we've got a bill. Hallelujah, we're going to get this thing passed. I think that there, excuse me, are people that are very dedicated to seeing a resolution of the problem. That just because the president is being difficult doesn't mean every man and woman in Congress is being difficult. The opposition. So the main issue has to do with confusion, and I truly believe that Congress is beside itself. They don't know where to go or who to be loyal to. But I can tell you, with the Three of Cups moving into seventh position, this is a sense of rejoicing or resolution. So even if Congress passes it, expect more hurdles along the way. It could still wind up rejected by Trump because he occasionally just wants to push his power. And again, we have here another card that denotes confusion, and that is the Seven of Cups, howling at the moon. Excuse me, howling at the moon, lunacy, confusion. This is what we think about with the moon, and Seven of Cups is being in the clouds. If somebody is showing early signs of Alzheimer's and they're the boss, what do you do about that? Do you continue to be in denial that this person is having cognitive decline, or do you get to a point where you have to acknowledge that daddy's not going to get better, right? Seven of Cups, opposition to a resolution is confusion and lunacy. Ultimately, the power is with Congress. I believe that Congress will override the president. I think that there's a break starting to happen. They have to be very judicious and call him my president, and I voted for him. But the bottom line is that a resolution has to happen because it weighs heavily on their shoulders. Here's the Six of Pentacles. It's the purse, and it's Congress card, and you can see that Knight of Swords coming in, which would indicate like a lot of anger at this time, a lot of people needing to dominate, and the final outcome is victory is attained. I get the feeling that the president is just on a power trip. I'm sorry to say, but that's what it looks like, trying to test who's loyal to him, and that he periodically has these chaos sessions, right? Which is something you see with borderline personality disorder, where they will just randomly create chaos and violence, the Seven of Swords, and then seek amusement and a sense of power as everyone runs to clean up the mess. And that is what we have here. We have a run amok child having a temper tantrum who gets off on seeing the power that he wields by creating this chaos. But ultimately, it comes down to the same thing. Are you there at the pleasure of the president, or are you there to fulfill the needs of the nation? And I would argue that you're not there for the pleasure of the president. You're there for the good of the people and to carry out the Constitution. So that is the first thing we see. Will there be a resolution? Yes, I think there'll be a resolution because I think the people will go, Congress will go against the will of the president. Now, I want to take a look at the Senate because the Senate is a very different situation. We think of it as like older. They tend to be an older population. Many of them once served in Congress, and now they're in the Senate. So let's go ahead and take a look at what's going on with Schumer and Booker and all the fighting that's going on in the Senate regarding all these career politicians, That's the criticism of Schumer, is that he's always in the middle of the fight, right? Um, but has that been good for the Democratic Party? Has it been good for the country? Maybe it has. I don't know. We have the world coming together. The world is in crisis, whether or not Congress and the Senate want to admit it or not. But the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant is running out of power in 8 days. We have bigger fish to fry than falling apart. We either come together and unify, or we're in serious trouble as a country. And the opposition is foolish behavior, hopes and dreams, procrastination, killed the dream. Knight of Pentacles, things slog along slowly. Procrastination, dreamland, foolish behavior all work against the Senate at this time. Nobody wants to leave. This bee in the bonnet of the Senate has to do with rules, regulations, and you violated this and this policy, and here's all the evidence against you. That's part of what you see happening in the Senate right now. And ultimately, how are we going to save our country when so much money has been stolen by people in positions of power? Simply because they didn't want to pay their taxes, they moved their money to the Panama Papers. They moved their money outside the United States, and billions and trillions of dollars are missing from the U.S. economy because of grifters. One of the reasons why they wanted to decentralize coin was to be able to not pay taxes and to be able to hide wealth. So you had people like Elon Musk coming in with PayPal, and I believe at that point he was most likely not compromised, but he was probably introduced to intelligence agencies, possibly the NSA, other groups, because PayPal was interested in monitoring how money was being transferred. So people often ask me, how was Elon Musk able to avoid being deported when he lied and got into business? And I would argue it's very obvious that he had security clearance pretty early on, long before SpaceX and Tesla, because of this interest that the feds have had in terms of locating missing money. And the idea of being to follow wire transfers was also very interesting to them. And so that's why I feel pretty strongly it was at that point that Musk and Till received some type of security clearance to do that kind of work, so that it could be monitored by groups like the NSA, the IRS, etc. So we have here a final action, and the concern being about economics, Knight of Pentacles. This is very auspicious for Senate, and hard work, that heavy load that lay ahead. So the Senate will not side with the president. The thing I'm curious about is I'd like to see what's going on with Trump's mental health. I just want to do a quick dive into his mental health, because it does feel like I've still got the power. I can still make the parents cry. There's a desire for power here, and to see what he can get away with. Also, the immigration policies have become a disaster, where they're just randomly picking people up off the streets that look like they could be foreign, including kidnapping tourists. Tourists in New York have gotten seized while they're vacationing in New York. Can you imagine what a vacation from night? Like me, I travel a lot. Like me in Paris, walking down the street and winding up in a French paddy wagon. I was just going to get the crepes. Try some of that onion soup at the Champs-Élysées. I mean, come on now. So it's crazy times. All right. Anytime Donald Trump is in the White House, it's crazy times, right? Donald Trump's future. Let's take a look at what's going to happen with Donald Trump in the coming weeks. Mental health challenges, everything else. What's going on with Donald Trump? And the first card we have here is issues regarding his health. We will start to see his age beginning to make more of an impact. Like we will begin to see it becoming, his health becomes front and center stage. If somebody is sick and they're not getting better, it becomes obvious. If somebody is stabilized, that's great. Medications. This is why, as we get older, we have to go on medications that we didn't have to go on when we were younger, right? Because we lose homeostasis. It becomes harder and harder for our body to maintain health the older it becomes. Aging is a health risk, right? So the myth of Donald Trump was that he was invincible. The myth was that he could eat junk food and he could do whatever he liked. But that was just a myth. Nobody can pop amphetamines and eat junk food, and there will be no health consequences. Right. So the takeaway here, I would say the number one issue we're addressing with Donald Trump is that he is facing a health crisis. I want to make sure that looks good for you. His opposition at this time is the Constitution. We've talked, excuse me, we've talked about the Hierophant, and we've talked about this idea of the Hierophant being the higher ethos or the Constitution when it comes to the US government, because it's that thing you look towards that is greater than yourself. And it is a rigid kind of dogma. You can't change the policy. And the policy is that the law of the land is the Constitution. If the Constitution was no longer the law of the land, it would no longer be the United States, land of the free, home of the brave, right? So at this time, he finds himself at war with that thing that must never, it's a living document, but the document itself, excuse me, and the importance of the document remains. Three of Pentacles, a desire to push his agenda through. He's always about making money. He's not very good at making money, but he always thinks in terms of making more money. He continues to be stubborn and difficult to work with, and that in and of itself could be an indication of a health challenge. His hopes and fears, his own karma and his own destiny, what he has accumulated, his final outcome, strong opposition from the King of Wands. This could be a number of people. Newsom, I think, is a fire sign. It could be Newsom. Final outcome is the sun comes over Trump. Interesting. They don't have confidence in him anymore. You know, Congress does not have faith in this guy. It simply isn't the religion they grew up with. If they grew up believing that Trump is normal, right? Generation Z. So there's no reason that Generation Z, if they're a Republican, is going to give up on this president. So, you know, a new beginning in the Republican Party, a sense of being betrayed. Young people. Excuse me. So, what they're saying here is that it's really young Republicans that break away from Trump. It's the young Republicans that break away from him. And they were the libertarians who wanted to make money and be financially successful. That was their dream of themselves. And they were their generation's yuppie. And when it didn't happen, they moved on. Their commitment is to their own economic success. the love affair with business, the business world. And this president, divorce is coming in for young Republicans. The courthouse moves in. The courthouse moves in. The courts often come up when you're facing a legal issue, or in some cases, it can be a divorce. This new Republican, this page of wands that comes in, the new babies of the Republican Party, and this sense that their biggest obstacle is a feeling of being constrained, limited by certain ideologies. Like they want to get off the homophobia. That doesn't speak for young Republicans and libertarians. That doesn't speak to them. They don't care, man. Like some people that are part of their libertarian group might be LGBTQ, right? Like Peter Thiel. So there's a feeling we need to get off that crap, man. Get off that. Get off this whole homophobe crap. It's not going to get you new young Republicans. This is a desire for that love affair, that two of cups that comes in with the Queen of Pentacles, which is the business world. Their family is the family of business and entrepreneur and how to make money and how not to pay taxes. And ultimately, what happened with the young Democrats is that, or the young Republicans, is that they lost confidence in the direction that the Republican Party was going in, and so ultimately, mostly young libertarians, live and let live. I think that they want to get off the whole telling women what to do with their bodies, and getting off the whole thing of homophobia. The new Republican Party is, let's make money, let's be successful, let's open up trade, let's make America greater. Those what is it? No, they don't say great again. Let's make America greater, I think. Is that the new motto? I don't know. But the point is that these are the reasons that ultimately the Republican Party breaks with Trump. I've said that I don't see him spending much time in the White House. We had a prediction that it would be 5 months. I think that was in mid to late July. I just feel that his health becomes the number one concern. I want to just check on Mike Johnson really quickly. Mike Johnson. And Mike Johnson's cards are stubborn refusal to change. At this point, he's going to do the status quo. He's going to do ultimately what is best for, the president. He continues to be loyal to the president. Four of Cups, loyal Mike. And then we have the Ace of Cups, an offer. It's as if he's letting the house run itself. He's not running the house. You folks have to work it out for yourselves. So that seems to be what he's saying. And then patience. He's going to sit back and have his drink and wait for other people to work it out. It could be 30 days. If you're asking me about the government shutdown and how much control Mike Johnson has over this party, I would say he has no control over the party. He's very stubborn, and he's just sitting there saying, well, I'm just going to wait until you figure it out. It could be 30 days on the shutdown. And so for that reason, we could be seeing more pressure to get rid of Trump, just like when he had to go into the bunker the last time. It doesn't surprise me that he wanted to clear up DC because he feared for his safety in protest. There it is again, that wishy-washy dreamer, procrastination. The Six of Pentacles is the handing out of the money, Congress, and then the final outcome is, it could go as long as 1 to 2 months. Like last time, they've already begun to pull people back from the FAA, the Federal Aviation, just because they don't have salaries to pay people because the money hasn't been secured. But because to work it out on its own. And I think this could cost Mike Johnson his career, to be honest with you. All right, I'm just going to check the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant next. Let's take a look. Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. Two of Swords, was it intentional that they lost power, that Putin is allowing this? Yes. There is the atomic agency, these Knight of Cups coming in, wanting to inspect. They want to inspect the facility. Hopes and fears that the devil has control over the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, that the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant could be, and they've threatened to use it as a dirty bomb. And then the final outcome is they could let the Atomic Commission come in and take control of the plant so that it's no longer under the control of any state, because the Queen of Pentacles comes in. The clarification at this time is grief. There's the Masters coming in along with the Knight of Cups, hopes and fears, Hermit again. I think that as humiliating as it is for Russia, they're going to have to bring in help and assistance from the International Atomic Committee, I believe is what they're called. Let me get the proper name. International Atomic Energy Agency. And International Atomic Energy Agency, yeah. So that it looks like with these types of cards, they're going to have to come in and fix it, because the business people, the masters, come in. But there's a sense of humiliation in the sense that it's a problem that Russia cannot fix without outside help. And that's basically what it says. All right, be strong, everybody. Live simply, live below your means, create intentional communities in your neighborhoods. Do what you can to share the land, to make things a little bit easier during these difficult times. Expect the shutdown could go on. It could be up to a month or longer with these cards, but there are people in Congress working very, very hard to make sure it gets resolved. Donald Trump's mental health and physical health crises problems will continue to present themselves. It'll become the main issue, the main challenge in the next couple of weeks, and expect open talk and open rebellion by Republicans as it becomes increasingly obvious that he can't rule. The last thing that it said was that we can expect some kind of civil unrest in the cabinet and also in Congress and Senate as people openly begin to defy the president and choose the Constitution instead. All right, I want to thank you all for watching this quick video. If you're trying to get in for a reading with me, you can find all that information below this video. Be kind to all so that all will be kind to you too. God bless. Peace out. We'll see you next time. Bye, everyone. Thank you. Bye-bye.